What's up guys, this is Dumark, back again with another video. The other videos that I have mentioned, to those who know, are gonna come out soon, but I just wanted to drop this one, just as a quick little reaction to the new devices that were released today. The S21, S21 Plus, and S21 Ultra. And probably we talk about why you shouldn't buy those devices. Now let's just get into it. So really, one of the big issues with the devices is the omission of a lot of key specs that make the S line, or why people buy Samsung phones from the beginning. Like the reason why people started buying Samsung phones wasn't because they had the best software or because they were necessarily the best phones. It's because they really had a lot of features, and that set them apart from other devices, even from devices that were other Android phones like HTC. It used to be the only device that you could get like a removable battery, you could get a headphone jack, you could get SD card support, you could get all of that stuff. And then slowly but surely they started taking those features away. So basically the features is what really drew people to the S line, especially starting like with the S2 and the S3, and the highest selling Android phone and Samsung highest selling phone, the S4, which had like almost all the features you could think of. It was the features that really set the S line apart. Design came in, and design really hasn't sold more Android phones for Samsung in particular anyway. It's always been the features, and a lot of reviewers tend to overlook the features due to sometimes their own biases and in favor of phones that they would rather sell more but just don't end up selling more, like enthusiast brands. So some people are going to be like, okay, Dumark, what does all that have to do with the S21 line? And just get straight to the point. The point is, the S21 line came out, and you have the two base phones, or the base and the plus one, that have the same storage that the the Note 9 had, right? Which was starts with 128 gigs. It might be a little bit faster, but okay. It has a 1080p screen, just that there's 120 hertz, and I can tell you for a fact that if you you start using both devices like I have, you won't really notice a substantial difference between 60 and 120 hertz after you get used to either of them. So I don't really feel like that's a huge selling point personally, unless you're like really invested in a higher refresh rate, like you're gaming, or you just want the ultimate smoothness of your phone, which you could get from devices that aren't even 120 hertz. With good optimization, you could get a device that feels just as smooth in certain areas. So 120 hertz isn't really that big of a selling point in my opinion, because I've used both of them. I can tell you for a fact that to my eyes and to a lot of people that I've spoken to, that higher resolution displays are something you can actually tell if you've used both of them apart. Like if you've used both of them one after the other, you could tell a little bit more of a difference. Yeah, so I guess some ways maybe 120 hertz matters to some people. To me, I don't really think it matters that much. So where does that leave us? You have a device now that has a 1080p screen, and it is 120 hertz, of course, but no SD card slot. No SD card is a big deal because as phones progress, they keep pushing more demanding features that demand like more space. For example, you're putting 8K capabilities into these new devices and you're giving us less storage. That's ridiculous. I mean, it's not necessarily less storage, But it is the same base storage as the Note 9, and now it has no SD card slot. Which, if you look at it in hindsight, is still ridiculous because the cheap S20 FE that came out just a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, it has an SD card slot, basically the same build as the base flagship that came out today. And the only thing is it has just 2 gigs less RAM depending on the variant you go for. But it has an SD card slot, and at the same time it has a slightly larger battery than the base S20. And that's all very funny. So why did Samsung do this might be the question that people want to ask. And to me, the reason they did this is actually to probably drive the sales of the Ultra model, because it has most of the key specs except for the SD card slot, which is another ploy for them to make more money, because then you probably spend more money to get bigger base storage, which is crazy. I'm not saying that you can't get by with just 120 gigs of storage, 128 gigs of storage, but with how newer games are coming out, those games, they're constantly improving those games with new features, and they take up more space. We're getting higher resolution cameras in our devices that take up more space. Some people are not really comfortable with saving a lot of information in the cloud, and that's not a universal feature in every country that people subscribe to. So a lot more people want to keep their pictures on their devices locally, and now you take away the SD card slot. How does that make any sense? So somebody's gonna be like, "What are you gonna? What can you do about it?" What you can do about it is not buy the new devices and buy last year's models, because last year's models are by and large better than this year's models, save for the SoC. And the SoC, unless you're doing like a lot of emulation, you're not really gonna notice too big of a difference. By and large, last year's model has some better specs, a little bit more RAM depending on the configuration. If you want the higher resolution display, you have the option. And with that, the build materials, depending on what is your preference, are arguably better. Apart from that, if you don't like last year's main line of models, you can go for the S20 FE, which is basically the same in terms of build materials, just a little bit less RAM, but you get back your SD card slot. So at the end of the day, these two phones to me feel like what the Note 10 and the Note 20 are to the actual main devices, which is to say that they feel like Samsung just kind of like threw these out there to kind of deter you from buying buying these ones and then going for either last year's models, which are better by and large, or going for the Ultra variant, because last year's sales weren't that great. I really don't recommend these new devices. However, I need to state that I haven't used them, so take my advice with a grain of salt. I will try and get the Ultra variant to see if I can review. But if you value storage and you value getting premium features, this year doesn't seem like you're going to get that from these models. If you like this video, subscribe, like, and then leave a comment if you disagree or agree with me down in the comment section below. Peace out.